We are the popular Muslim identical twins from Saudi Arabia, but from now, we have been saved by Jesus Christ of Nazareth.
That was me and my twin brother at a Christian conference professing our acceptance of Jesus as our Lord and Savior. My name is Tariq Al-Harbi, and my twin brother is Yusuf Al-Harbi. We were popular Muslim content creators in Saudi Arabia until recently, when we saw the light and abandoned Islam for Christianity after we had a personal encounter with Jesus. This is our story that led to the point of the conference. My brother and I shared everything from the moment we entered this world. We were born 7 minutes apart on a hot summer night in July 1997 at the King Abdulaziz Medical City in Jeddah. I came first. 7 minutes later, my brother Yusuf followed. The doctors told our mother that we were the most identical twins they had ever delivered. Same weight, same length, same dark hair, same birthmark behind the left ear. When the nurses placed us side by side in the nursery, even our mother could not tell us apart. She had to tie a small green thread around my wrist and a red one around Yusuf's, so she would know who was who during feeding. That was the beginning of a lifetime of being mistaken for each other, confused by teachers, mixed up by relatives, swapped by friends who thought they were talking to one of us when they were really talking to the other. We learned early that being identical twins in Saudi Arabia made you something between a celebrity and a curiosity. People stared at us everywhere we went. They pointed, they whispered, they asked our parents if we could read each other's minds. My father, Ibrahim Al-Harbi, is a well-known Islamic scholar who spent over 20 years teaching Aqidah, which is Islamic theology, at the Al-Qura University in Mecca. He is not a television sheikh or a social media preacher. He is an academic, a man who has spent his life buried in classical Islamic texts, writing papers on the nature of Allah and the principles of Tawheed, which is the oneness of God. His reputation in Islamic scholarly circles is immense. Students travel from across the Muslim world to attend his lectures. His books are used as textbooks in Islamic universities from Morocco to Malaysia. Our mother Huda comes from a prominent religious family in Taif, the mountain city, about 90 kilometers southeast of Makkah. Her father was an imam at one of the oldest mosques in Taif. Her brothers are all memorizers of the Quran. Religion was not just something our family practiced. It was the air we breathed, the ground we walked on, the walls that surrounded us from the moment we were born and until the day we finally broke free. Growing up in Jeddah, Yusuf and I were inseparable. We attended the same school in the Al Rawda district. We sat next to each other in every class. We wore the same clothes. We ate the same food. We even got sick at the same time, which our mother said was proof that Allah had created us from a single soul split into two bodies. Our father enrolled us in Quran memorization classes when we were 6 years old at a mosque near our home in the Al Salama district. We memorized the Quran together, side by side, verse by verse, surah by surah. By the time we were 13, both of us had completed full memorization of all 114 surahs. Our father held a celebration at our home and invited dozens of scholars and students. He stood between us with his hands on our shoulders and told the guests that his twin sons were his greatest contribution to the Ummah, that we were living proof that the Quran was being preserved in the hearts of the next generation. Everyone clapped, everyone congratulated us. Yusuf and I smiled and accepted the praise. But even then, at 13 years old, I felt something that troubled me. I had memorized every word of the Quran, but I did not understand why it left me feeling nothing. As teenagers, Yusuf and I discovered social media. It started as a hobby. We created an account on Instagram in 2013 when we were 16 years old. We posted photos of ourselves dressed identically standing in front of landmarks in Jeddah, the Red Sea Corniche, the King Fahd Fountain, the floating mosque in the Al-Hamra district. People loved it. Two identical faces in matching thobes and shimmahs smiling at the camera with the Saudi landscape behind them. Our following grew quickly. Within a year, we had 50,000 followers. Within 2 years, we had 200,000. By the time we were 19, we had crossed 1 million followers on Instagram and had expanded to YouTube and Snapchat. We posted content about Saudi culture, about Islamic lifestyle, about what it was like to be identical twins in the kingdom. We filmed ourselves performing Umrah together at the Grand Mosque in Mecca, dressed identically circling the Kaaba in perfect synchronization. That video alone got over 3 million views. People called us the Miracle Twins, the Blessed Brothers, the pride of Saudi youth. Our father was proud of our online presence because we used it to promote Islam. We posted Quran recitation videos where we recited together in perfect harmony, our voices blending into one because even our voices were identical. We posted videos about the importance of prayer and fasting and charity. We collaborated with Islamic organizations and promoted religious campaigns during Ramadan. Our content was clean, wholesome, and completely aligned with the values of the kingdom. We were invited to events by the Ministry of Islamic Affairs. We were featured in Saudi newspapers and magazines. We were held up as examples of how young Saudis could use modern technology to serve the faith. We were the golden boys, the poster children for a new generation of digitally savvy, devout Muslim youth. And every single day I smiled for the camera while something inside me was slowly dying. The emptiness started when I was about 17. I cannot point to a single moment when it began. It was more like a fog that crept in slowly, so gradually that I did not notice it until it had already filled every room inside me. I prayed 5 times a day. I had memorized the entire Quran. I fasted every Ramadan. I performed Umrah more times than I could count. I lived in one of the most religious households in Jeddah with a father who was literally a professor of Islamic theology. I had every spiritual resource available to me that a Muslim could possibly have. And yet, when I prostrated in Salat, pressing my forehead to the ground and reciting the words I had been taught since childhood, I felt absolutely nothing. No connection. No presence, no peace, no sense that anyone was listening on the other side. I was speaking into a void. I was performing rituals that had no meaning. I was going through motions that produced no life. And the worst part was I could not tell anyone. Not my father, who had built his entire career on the certainty that Islam was the complete and final truth. Not my mother, who wept with joy every time she heard us recite Quran. Not our millions of followers who looked to us as models of faith, and not Yusuf. That was the loneliest part, my twin brother, the person I had shared everything with since before birth, the person who slept in the bed next to mine, who ate every meal across from me, who finished my sentences and knew my thoughts before I spoke them. I could not tell him, because I was terrified that he would look at me with horror and disgust, that he would tell our father, that he would see me as broken and defective, a twin who came out wrong, a copy with a flaw in the code. So I buried it. I pushed the emptiness down into the deepest part of myself, and I locked it away, and I smiled for the camera, and I recited Quran, and I praised Allah with my lips while my heart screamed in silence. I assumed I was the only one suffering. I assumed Yusuf was fine, that his faith was real and strong and genuine, that whatever was wrong with me was mine alone. a defect in my soul that I had to carry by myself. I did not know that on the other side of our bedroom wall, lying in his own bed, staring at the same ceiling, my identical twin brother was fighting the exact same battle, carrying the exact same emptiness, hiding the exact same secret, suffering in the exact same silence. Two mirrors facing each other, both cracked, both hiding the cracks, both too afraid to let the other one see. When I was 18, our father made a decision that changed everything. He announced at dinner one evening that we were moving from Jeddah to Makkah. He had been offered a senior teaching position at Al-Qura University, and he wanted the family to live in the holy city permanently. He said it was a blessing from Allah. He said living in Makkah would bring us closer to God. He said every prayer performed in the Grand Mosque was worth 100,000 prayers performed anywhere else in the world. He quoted the hadith with tears in his eyes and said, "How could any Muslim turn down the opportunity to live in the shadow of the Kaaba?" My mother wept with happiness. Yusuf and I looked at each other across the table and nodded in agreement, because that is what sons of Ibrahim al-Harbi do. They nod, they agree, they obey. We moved into a spacious apartment in the Al-Aziziyah district of Makkah, about 3 kilometers from the Grand Mosque. Close enough that we could walk there for prayers, close enough that the sound of the adhan echoed through our windows 5 times a day like a heartbeat that never stopped. Living in Makkah was supposed to be the ultimate spiritual experience. Every Muslim in the world dreams of being close to the Kaaba. Pilgrims travel thousands of kilometers and spend their life savings just to spend a few days in this city. They weep when they first see the Kaaba. They tremble when they touch the black stone. They prostrate on the marble floor of the Grand Mosque and feel the presence of Allah so strongly that they cannot stand. That is what they say. That is what the books teach. That is what my father told us every single day. But for me, living in Makkah did not bring me closer to God. It made the distance more painful, because now I was standing in the holiest place on earth, surrounded by millions of people who seemed to feel everything I could not feel. I watched pilgrims from Indonesia and Nigeria and Turkey and Pakistan circling the Kaaba with tears streaming down their faces. I watched old men pressing their foreheads to the ground and sobbing with devotion. I watched women clutching the cloth of the Kaaba, begging Allah for mercy, and I felt nothing, absolutely nothing. Yusuf and I performed tawaf regularly, sometimes twice a week. We would walk to the Grand Mosque after Isha prayer when the crowds were slightly thinner and join the river of bodies circling the Kaaba counterclockwise 7 times. The Kaaba stood in the center, draped in its black cloth embroidered with gold Quranic verses, massive, ancient, sacred, the direction every Muslim on earth faces when they pray, the spiritual center of Islam. And I walked around it over and over and over, feeling like a man walking in circles in a desert, searching for water that was not there. I counted my steps. I recited the prescribed prayers. I raised my hands toward the black stone and made dua. I did everything correctly, every motion perfect, every word precise, but my heart was a locked room with no one inside it. The more tawaf I performed, the emptier I became. It was as if every circle around the Kaaba was another loop of a chain, wrapping tighter around my soul. I was not getting closer to God. I was getting more trapped. Our social media presence continued to grow after the move to Makkah. In fact, it exploded. Content from the holy city was gold for our audience. We filmed ourselves performing tawaf together. We filmed the call to prayer echoing across the marble courtyards. We filmed the sunrise over the minarets of the Grand Mosque. We filmed ourselves reciting Quran inside the mosque with the Kaaba visible behind us. Every video went viral. Our following climbed past 3 million across all platforms. Brands wanted to sponsor us. Islamic organizations wanted to partner with us. We were invited to religious conferences across the Gulf. We were the twin faces of young Saudi Islam, handsome, devout, digital, everything the kingdom wanted to show the world about its youth. But every video we filmed was a performance. Every smile was manufactured, every display of devotion was hollow. I would stand in front of the camera with the Kaaba behind me reciting a verse about the greatness of Allah, and inside I would be screaming, God, if you are real, why can I not feel you? Why am I standing in your holiest place on earth and you feel further away than ever? The pressure of living in Makkah made everything worse. In Jeddah, I could at least escape into normal life. Shopping malls and restaurants and the Corniche and the beach. Jeddah had a cosmopolitan energy that allowed you to breathe. But Makkah was religion from morning to night. The entire city existed for one purpose: worship. The Grand Mosque dominated everything. The conversation in every home was about prayer and fasting and Quran and Hadith. The rhythm of daily life was set by the 5 daily calls to prayer that echoed from thousands of speakers across the city so loudly that you could not ignore them even if you tried. In Makkah, you could not take a break from being Muslim. You could not step outside the religious framework for even a moment. The air itself seemed saturated with expectation. The expectation that you should be the most grateful, most devoted, most spiritually alive Muslim on the planet simply because you had the privilege of living near the Kaaba. And if you were not, if you felt empty and disconnected and dead inside while living in the holiest city in Islam, then something was deeply, profoundly wrong with you. That is what I believed, that something was wrong with me, that I was defective, that I was broken in a way that could not be fixed. I started wondering if I was being punished by Allah for some sin I had committed that I could not remember. I started performing extra prayers, voluntary night prayers called tahajjud. That I would set my alarm for 2 in the morning and sneak out of bed while Yusuf slept and prostrate on my prayer rug in the darkness of our living room, begging Allah to fix whatever was broken inside me. I would pray until my knees ached and my forehead was raw from pressing it against the carpet. I would recite entire surahs from memory: Al-Baqarah, Al-Imran, Yasin, Ar-Rahman. I would weep and beg and plead with Allah to speak to me, to give me a sign, to send me a feeling, anything. Even the smallest whisper to let me know He was real and that He heard me. But the silence was absolute. Every prayer disappeared into the ceiling like smoke. Every tear fell on a carpet that absorbed it and gave nothing back. I was pouring my soul into a void, and the void just swallowed everything without returning a single drop of comfort. I started having dark thoughts, not about hurting myself, but about disappearing, about walking away from everything, from the camera, from the followers, from the mosque, from Makkah, from Islam itself. I fantasized about getting on a plane and flying to some country where nobody knew my name or my face or my father, where I could sit in a room alone and not have to pretend to believe something I was no longer sure was true. But I could never do that, because leaving would mean abandoning Yusuf. And no matter how much pain I was in, I could not imagine life without my brother. He was the only thing that still felt real to me, the only relationship that still had weight, even though I could not share my deepest struggle with him. His presence alone was enough to keep me anchored to a life I was otherwise ready to abandon. So I stayed. I performed. I smiled. I circled the Kaaba. I recited Quran, I posted content, and every night I lay in my bed in our apartment in Al Azizia, staring at the ceiling, listening to my brothers breathing in the bed next to mine, wondering if this was all there was. If I would spend the rest of my life performing a faith I could not feel in a city that was supposed to be the closest place on earth to God, but felt to me like the loneliest place in the universe. The pilgrims who came to Mecca during Hajj season made it even harder. Every year, millions of Muslims flooded into the city from every corner of the planet. They filled every street, every hotel, every sidewalk. They walked toward the Grand Mosque with faces full of anticipation and wonder. Many of them had saved their entire lives for this trip. But some had sold their homes or their land to afford the journey. And when they entered the mosque and saw the Kaaba for the first time, they collapsed. They fell to their knees weeping. They raised their hands to the sky and cried out to Allah with a sincerity so raw it was almost painful to watch. And I stood among them during Hajj season, year after year, watching their devotion, watching their tears, watching their absolute certainty that they were standing in the presence of God. And I wanted so desperately to feel what they felt. I would close my eyes and try to force the feeling. Try to manufacture the connection, try to convince my heart to believe what my mind had been taught. But you cannot force your heart to feel something it does not feel. And my heart felt nothing, only emptiness, only silence, and only the growing, terrifying suspicion that the God of the Kaaba was not speaking because he was not there. And if he was not there, then everything I had built my entire life on was a beautiful, elaborate, magnificent lie. It happened on a Wednesday night in February 2023. I remember the exact date because it was the night my entire relationship with my brother changed forever. We had just returned from Isha prayer at the Grand Mosque. The walk home was quiet. Mecca was in a calm season between Umrah waves, and the streets of Al Azizia were mostly empty. Our parents were visiting relatives in Taif for the week, so Yusuf and I had the apartment to ourselves. We ate a simple dinner together, rice and grilled chicken from a restaurant on Ibrahim Al-Khalil Street. We sat on the floor of our living room, eating in silence, which was unusual for us. Normally, we talked constantly about content ideas, about comments on our videos, about what our father said in his latest lecture. But that night, neither of us had words. The silence between us was heavy, thick, like the air before a sandstorm when everything goes still and you can feel the pressure building. I could sense something was wrong with Yusuf. He was chewing slowly, staring at his plate, barely eating. His eyes looked distant, hollow, like he was physically in the room, but his mind was somewhere far away. After dinner, Yusuf stood up and walked to the window that overlooked the street below. He stood there with his back to me for a long time. His shoulders were tense. His hands were gripping the windowsill so tightly that his knuckles were white. I watched him from across the room, and something in my chest tightened. I knew that posture. I knew that tension. I recognized it because I saw it in my own body every single day. The posture of a man holding something inside him that is too heavy to carry, but too dangerous to put down. I almost said something. I almost asked him what was wrong, but I was afraid that if I opened that door, he would ask me the same question and I would have to answer honestly. And honest answers in our world were more dangerous than bombs. So I stayed quiet and started cleaning up the dinner plates, hoping the moment would pass. But it did not pass. Yusuf turned away from the window and looked at me. His eyes were red. Not from crying, from holding back tears. from the strain of keeping everything locked inside for so long that the pressure was physically hurting him. He opened his mouth to speak and then closed it again. He turned back to the window. Then he turned to me again. He was fighting with himself, wrestling with something that wanted to come out but was being held back by years of training and fear and the knowledge that some words once spoken can never be taken back. I put the plates down and stood still watching him. And then he broke, not dramatically, not with shouting or falling to the floor. He just sat down slowly on the carpet beside the window and put his face in his hand and said 5 words that changed everything. I cannot do this anymore. I stood frozen in the middle of the room, holding a plate in one hand and a glass in the other. I could not move. I could not speak, because I knew exactly what he meant. I did not need him to explain. I did not need context or details or a long speech. Those 5 words carried the weight of everything I had been feeling for years. The emptiness, the performance, the smiling for the camera while dying inside, the circling of the Kaaba feeling nothing, the prayers that disappeared into silence. I knew, because I was drowning in the same ocean. But I needed to hear him say it. I needed to be sure. So I set down the plate and the glass and walked over to where he was sitting. I sat down on the floor across from him and I asked him quietly, "What do you mean, Yusuf? What can you not do anymore?" He looked up at me and the pain in his eyes was so raw, so exposed, so identical to my own pain that it took my breath away. He said, "Tariq, I feel nothing when I pray. Ado, I feel nothing when I fast. I feel nothing when I stand in front of the Kaaba. I have memorized the entire Quran and it means nothing to me. I have been pretending for years. Every video we film, every prayer we perform, every tawaf we do, I am acting, I'm performing for our Father and our followers and the entire world. And I cannot do it anymore. The weight is crushing me. I think I am losing my mind." The room went completely silent after he spoke. Neither of us moved. We just sat there on the carpet of our apartment in Al-Aziziyah, 2 identical brothers staring at each other with the same broken expression on the same face. And then something happened that I did not plan and could not control. My own walls collapsed. Every barrier I had built to protect my secret crumbled in an instant. Because my brother had just described my exact experience using the exact words I would have used. And the relief of not being alone in it anymore was so overwhelming that I started crying. Not quietly. I wept. My whole body shook. And through the tears, I said, "Yusuf, I have been feeling the same thing. For years, I thought I was the only one. I thought something was wrong with me. I have been praying tahajjud at 2 in the morning, begging Allah to fix me, and He never answers. I feel nothing. I believe nothing. And I have been terrified to tell you because I thought you would hate me." Yusuf stared at me with his mouth open. Then he started crying too. Worse. We sat there on the floor, 2 grown men, 2 identical twins weeping together in an apartment in the holiest city in Islam, because we had both been carrying the same unbearable secret alone for years. He crawled across the carpet and grabbed me, and we held each other like we did when we were children, like the world was falling apart and the only solid thing left was each other. We stayed like that for a long time, not speaking, just holding on, letting the tears drain out all the poison we had been storing inside us. When we finally pulled apart and wiped our faces, we sat cross-legged, facing each other, and for the first time in our lives, we had a completely honest conversation about faith. No performance, no cameras, no audience, just 2 brothers telling each other the truth. We talked until 3 in the morning. We shared everything. Every doubt, every question, every night of silent desperation. Yusuf told me he had started having panic attacks during Tawaf. He said the crowds and the circling and the chanting made him feel like he was trapped in a machine that was grinding him down. He said he would sometimes stop in the middle of Tawaf, unable to move, while thousands of pilgrims flowed around him like a river around a stone. He said he felt invisible to Allah, like he did not exist, like his prayers were hitting a wall and falling to the ground. I told him about my tahajjud prayers, about the hours I spent prostrating in the dark, begging for a sign, about the silence that swallowed every word, about the growing suspicion that the God we were raised to worship was either not listening or not there. Saying those words out loud for the first time was terrifying and liberating at the same time, like jumping off a cliff and discovering you can fly. That night we made a pact. We agreed that we would search for the truth together, not the truth we were taught, not the truth our father preached, not the truth our followers expected, the actual truth, whatever it was, wherever it led, even if it led us away from everything we knew. We swore to each other that we would be completely honest. No more hiding, no more pretending, no more suffering alone. We were twins. We came into this world together, and we would find the truth together or die trying. Over the following weeks, we began our search. We used VPN services to access websites that were blocked in Saudi Arabia. We read about different religions: Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, Judaism. We read philosophy. We read arguments for and against the existence of God. We consumed everything we could find, searching for something that resonated with the emptiness inside us. Most of what we read was interesting but did not touch us deeply, until we found the testimonies. It started with the single video on YouTube that had been uploaded by a Persian language Christian channel. It showed an Iranian man about 40 years old sitting in front of a camera telling his story. He said he had been a devout Muslim his entire life. He said he had prayed and fasted and made pilgrimage. He said he had felt empty and disconnected from God for decades. And then, one night, Jesus appeared to him in a dream. A man in white with a face like the sun, who spoke his name and said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life. Come to me." The Iranian man said he woke up weeping. He said he gave his life to Jesus that night and everything changed. The emptiness was filled, the silence was broken. God finally spoke back. Yusuf and I watched that video sitting side by side on his bed, with our heads close together, sharing a single pair of earphones so our neighbors would not hear. When it ended, we looked at each other, and I saw something in my brother's eyes that I had not seen in years. A spark, not of faith, not yet, but of hope. The hope that maybe, just maybe, there was an answer out there that we had not yet found. We watched another video, then another, then another. Testimony after testimony. Iranians, Egyptians, Iraqis, Saudis, Algerians, Moroccans, all telling the same story. Dreams of a man in white, a voice speaking their name. Overwhelming love. Complete transformation. We watched for hours until the sun came up over Mecca and the call to Fajr prayer echoed through our window. We looked at each other, and without saying a word, we both knew. Something was happening. Something was pulling us. And neither of us was going to resist it. 3 weeks after we discovered the testimonies, Yusuf and I found ourselves walking toward the Grand Mosque for Tawaf on a Thursday night during the last week of Dhul Hijjah. Hajj season had just ended, and the massive crowds of pilgrims were thinning. The city was exhaling after weeks of holding its breath under the weight of millions of worshippers. We chose to go late after midnight when the Tawaf area would be less congested. We had done this hundreds of times before. The walk from our apartment in Al Azizia to the Grand Mosque took about 25 minutes on foot. We walked in silence through the quiet streets, past the shuttered shops and empty hotel lobbies. The air was warm and dry. The minarets of the mosque glowed white against the dark sky like pillars holding up the heavens. Neither of us spoke about the testimonies we had been watching. We had not discussed them much since that first night. But I knew Yusuf was thinking about them constantly, because I was thinking about them constantly. The man in white, the voice that spoke people's names, the love that filled the emptiness. It was all spinning in my head like a wheel that would not stop turning. We entered the Grand Mosque through the King Abdulaziz Gate on the eastern side. Even at this late hour, there were thousands of people inside. The mosque never truly empties. There is always someone praying, someone reciting Quran, someone circling the Kaaba. We performed wudu at the ablution fountains and walked through the marble corridors toward the open courtyard where the Kaaba stood. When I saw it, I felt the same thing I always felt. Nothing. That massive black cube draped in gold-embroidered silk standing in the center of the white marble courtyard surrounded by circling bodies. It was beautiful. It was ancient. It was the most sacred structure in Islam, and it stirred absolutely nothing inside me. We descended the stairs to the Tawaf area and joined the river of people moving counterclockwise around the Kaaba, shoulder to shoulder, with strangers from every nation on earth. The sound of thousands of voices murmuring prayers and supplications in dozens of languages filled the air like a low, continuous hum. Yusuf walked beside me on my left. Our steps synchronized as they always were. Two identical bodies moving in identical rhythm around a stone that was supposed to connect us to God. We completed the first circuit, then the second, then the third. I was reciting the standard Tawaf prayers mechanically. The words came out of my mouth from muscle memory, while my mind was somewhere else entirely. I was thinking about an Iranian woman from one of the testimonies we had watched. She had described seeing Jesus standing in her living room in Tehran. She said the light coming from him was so intense she could not look at his face. She said he spoke her name and told her he loved her. She said in that single moment she received more love than 30 years of Islamic practice had ever given her. I was thinking about her words when something happened that I cannot explain with logic or science or any framework of understanding that I possessed at that time. We were halfway through our fourth circuit, the section of the Tawaf circle closest to the Maqam Ibrahim, the glass enclosure that holds the stone where Prophet Ibrahim supposedly stood while building the Kaaba. The crowd was dense in that area, bodies pressing against each other, the heat of hundreds of people concentrated in a small space. And then I saw him. At first I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, the exhaustion of many sleepless nights watching testimonies, the emotional strain of the past weeks, the heat and the crowd and the rhythmic motion of walking in circles for over an hour. My mind was tired, my body was tired. I blinked hard and looked again. But he was still there, standing in the Tawaf circle about 15 meters ahead of me, not moving, not circling, standing completely still while the river of pilgrims flowed around him like water flowing around a rock. A man dressed in white, not the white of an ihram garment that pilgrims wear, a different white, a white that glowed, a white that seemed to produce its own light. He was tall. His robe reached to his feet and moved slightly as if stirred by a breeze that did not exist in the still heavy air of the mosque courtyard. And his face. I tried to look at his face, but I could not focus on it. It was too bright, like trying to look at the sun reflected off water. The features were there, but they were obscured by a radiance that my eyes could not process. I stopped walking, my feet locked to the marble floor. The pilgrims behind me bumped into me and flowed around me, muttering complaints, but I could not move. I was frozen. Every nerve in my body was firing. Every hair on my arms was standing up. My heart was slamming against my ribs so hard I thought it would crack them. And then I felt a hand grab my arm. I looked to my left and Yusuf was standing beside me. He had stopped too. His face was white as chalk. His eyes were wide open, so wide I could see the whites all the way around his irises. His mouth was open, but no sound was coming out. He was staring at the same spot I was staring at. He was seeing what I was seeing. My brother was seeing the man in white. We looked at each other for a fraction of a second, and in that look, an entire conversation happened without words. You see him? Yes, I see him. What is happening? I do not know. We turned back toward the figure, and he was looking directly at us. Not at the crowd, not at the Kaaba, at us, both of us. His gaze moved from me to Yusuf and back to me, and I felt it. I felt his eyes on me like a physical force, like warm hands pressing against my chest, like being held by something so vast and powerful that my body could barely contain the sensation. Then he spoke, not with his mouth moving the way a normal person speaks. The words appeared inside me, inside my mind, inside my chest, inside my bones. They resonated through my entire body like a bell being struck from the inside. He said, "You are walking in circles, searching for God. But God is not in this stone. I am the way. Stop walking. Come to me." The words were in Arabic, perfect classical Arabic, the kind my father taught at the university, the kind the Quran was written in. But these words carried something that the Quran never carried when I recited it. They carried life. They carried warmth. They carried a love so pure and so overwhelming that my knees buckled and I nearly collapsed onto the marble floor. I grabbed Yusuf's arm to steady myself, and I felt him shaking. His entire body was trembling. Tears were streaming down his face. He had heard it too. The same words, the same voice, inside him just as it was inside me. We stood there in the middle of the Tawaf circle while thousands of pilgrims circled around us chanting prayers to Allah, and we were face to face with someone who was not Allah. Someone who was standing in the holiest site in Islam and saying, "God is not in this stone. I am the way." The figure began to move toward us, not walking exactly, more like gliding. The crowd did not seem to see him. Pilgrims passed right through the space where he stood without reacting. He was visible only to us. As he came closer, the light intensified, the warmth grew stronger, and I saw his hands. He held them out towards us, palms up, and on each palm there was a mark, a wound, a scar that looked like it had been made by something being driven through the flesh. The scars were not gruesome, they were beautiful. They glowed with the same light that surrounded his entire body. And when I saw them, something inside me broke open. Something ancient and locked and buried so deep I did not even know it existed. A door in my soul that had been sealed shut since the day I was born flew open, and through it poured a flood of light and love and truth that obliterated every wall I had ever built. I knew who he was. I did not need anyone to tell me. I did not need a scholar or a book or a lecture. I knew in the deepest part of my being with a certainty that surpassed anything I had ever known in my entire life. This was Jesus, Isa al-Masih, the one Islam called a prophet, but who was standing in front of me radiating a glory that no mere prophet could possess. He was not a prophet. He was God in human form, the Word made flesh, the light of the world standing in the middle of the darkness I had been circling for 25 years. I fell to my knees on the marble floor. Yusuf fell beside me. We were both weeping. Not the controlled, quiet tears of Muslim men praying at the Kaaba. We were sobbing, gasping, our bodies convulsing with the force of what was happening inside us. Pilgrims around us probably thought we were overcome with devotion. Two young men weeping at the sight of the Kaaba. How pious, how beautiful. They had no idea that we were not weeping for the Kaaba. We were weeping because the God we had been searching for our entire lives was standing right in front of us, and he was not who we had been told he was. He spoke again. This time the words were softer, gentler, like a father speaking to his children. He said, "I have watched you both since before you were born. I knit you together in your mother's womb. I gave you the same face so that when this moment came, you would see my truth reflected in each other. You are mine, both of you. You have always been mine. Stop striving. Stop performing. Stop walking in circles. I am your rest. Come to me and I will give you life. Real life. Life that no religion can give and no death can take away." The presence remained with us for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only minutes. The light slowly dimmed. The figure gradually faded, but the love did not fade. It stayed. It settled into my chest like a fire that had been lit in a furnace that would never go out. When I finally opened my eyes and looked around, the tawaf was continuing as if nothing had happened. Pilgrims circling, voices chanting, the Kaaba standing black and silent in the center. Everything looked the same, but everything was different. I looked at Yusuf kneeling beside me on the marble floor. His face was wet with tears. His eyes were closed. His lips were moving silently. I reached over and grabbed his hand and squeezed it. He opened his eyes and looked at me. And in that look, I saw everything I needed to see. He had experienced exactly what I had experienced. He had heard the same words. He had seen the same scars. He had felt the same love. We did not need to discuss it. We did not need to analyze it or debate it or question it. We knew. We both knew. We stood up slowly on shaking legs. We turned away from the Kaaba, and for the first time in our lives, we walked out of the Grand Mosque not as Muslims circling a stone, but as followers of Jesus Christ walking toward the light. We did not speak during the entire walk home. 25 minutes of silence through the empty streets of Makkah, our feet hitting the pavement in perfect synchronization as always. That two identical bodies, two identical faces, and now two identical transformed hearts. When we reached our apartment, we went inside, locked the door, and sat on the floor of the living room in the exact same spot where Yusuf had first confessed his emptiness to me weeks earlier. We sat there in silence for a long time. Then Yusuf spoke. He said one sentence. He said that was Jesus. I nodded. I said yes. That was Jesus. And then we both started laughing. Not because it was funny, because the joy that was flooding through us was so intense, so foreign, so completely unlike anything we had ever experienced that our bodies did not know how to process it. We laughed and cried at the same time, holding each other on the floor of our apartment in the holiest city in Islam, two sons of an Islamic scholar, two memorizers of the Quran, two Saudi influencers with 3 million followers, kneeling on a carpet in Al Azizia, surrendering their lives to the man in white who had walked into the Grand Mosque and called them out of the circles and into his arms. The next morning, we woke up in our apartment in Al Azizia, and the first thing I felt before I even opened my eyes was the presence. It was still there, the warmth in my chest, the peace that had settled into my bones during the night. For a moment, I thought maybe I had dreamed the whole thing. Maybe my exhausted mind had invented the man in white at the Kaaba. Maybe it was a hallucination caused by sleep deprivation and emotional strain. But then I opened my eyes and looked across the room at Yusuf, lying in his bed, staring at the ceiling with tears rolling silently down his temples into his pillow. He turned his head and looked at me, and without a word, I knew. It was real. It happened. We had both seen him. We had both heard him. And we were both completely, irreversibly different. We lay there in silence for a long time, listening to the Fajr Adhan echoing through the window from the Grand Mosque, the same call to prayer we had heard every morning for years. But this morning it sounded different. It sounded like a call to a God we no longer believed in, echoing across a city where we were now the most dangerous kind of people alive. We could not tell anyone. That reality hit us within the first hour of that first morning. We were in Makkah, not just any city in Saudi Arabia, Makkah, the city where non-Muslims were forbidden by law from even entering, the city that existed solely as the spiritual capital of Islam, the city where our father taught Islamic theology at the most prestigious Islamic university in the country. If anyone discovered that two sons of Ibrahim al-Harbi had given their lives to Jesus Christ inside the Grand Mosque during Tawaf, the consequences would be catastrophic beyond imagination. Our father's career would be destroyed. Our family name would be erased. We would be arrested by the Mabahith and taken to a place where people disappear. In Saudi Arabia, apostasy from Islam is punishable by death. There is no ambiguity, no debate, no appeal process. You leave Islam and the state has the legal and religious authority to execute you. We were two dead men walking through the streets of the holiest city in Islam, carrying the most dangerous secret in the kingdom inside our identical chests. For the first few weeks, we survived on instinct. We continued our routine exactly as before. We prayed at the Grand Mosque. We posted content on our social media accounts. We attended our father's lectures at Al-Qura University. We smiled and recited Quran and performed every Islamic duty with the same precision we had always displayed. But everything had changed underneath. When we prostrated in Salat, our hearts were talking to Jesus, not Allah. When we recited Quran, our minds were replaying the words the man in white had spoken to us at the Kaaba. I am the way, stop walking. Come to me. We were actors performing the greatest deception of our lives on the most dangerous stage in the world. And every moment of every day we were terrified that someone would see through the performance, that our father would notice something different in our eyes, that a follower would detect a change in our tone, that the mask would slip for just 1 second and everything would come crashing down. We needed a Bible. We needed to understand who Jesus was beyond the encounter at the Kaaba. We knew almost nothing about Christianity except what Islam had taught us, which we now understood was incomplete and distorted. Islam taught that Jesus was a prophet, a messenger sent by Allah, that he was born of a virgin, that he performed miracles, but that he was not divine, that he was not the Son of God, that he did not die on the cross, that someone else was crucified in his place, that claiming Jesus was God was the worst sin in Islam called shirk, which is associating partners with Allah. Everything we had been taught said Jesus was less than what we had experienced. But what we experienced at the Kaaba made it absolutely clear that Jesus was far more than a prophet. No prophet radiates that kind of glory. No prophet carries wounds in his hands from a sacrifice he made for humanity. No prophet speaks with the authority of God himself. We needed the Christian scriptures to understand what we had seen and who we had encountered. Getting a Bible in Mecca was nearly impossible. The city had no churches, no Christian bookstores, no underground networks that we knew of. We could not order one online because all mail in Saudi Arabia passed through customs where religious contraband was screened and confiscated. We could not ask anyone because trust was a luxury we could not afford. One wrong word to one wrong person and we would be reported. So we turned to the only tool we had, our phones. Using a VPN service, we downloaded a Bible application and installed it on a secondary phone that we kept hidden inside a hollowed-out compartment in the bottom of Yusuf's backpack. We downloaded the Arabic New Testament and began reading it together every night after our parents went to sleep. We would sit on the bathroom floor with the door locked and the shower running to cover any sound and read by the light of the phone screen the Gospel of Matthew, then Mark, then Luke, then John. Every page confirmed what we had experienced. The Jesus of the Bible was the man we had seen at the Kaaba. His words in scripture matched the words he had spoken to us. I am the way, the truth, and the life. Come to me, all you who are weary. I will give you rest. The scars on his hands matched the crucifixion account. He had died on the cross. He had risen from the dead. Islam was wrong. He was not replaced by a substitute. He willingly laid down his life as a sacrifice for the sins of humanity. And he was alive. We had seen him alive with our own eyes, standing in the middle of the Grand Mosque, reading the Bible in the bathroom of our apartment in Mecca with the shower running became our nightly ritual. We devoured the scriptures like starving men finding bread. Every verse fed something inside us that had been hungry for 25 years. We read about grace and understood for the first time that God's love was not earned through works but given freely through faith. So we read about forgiveness and understood that the mountain of guilt we had carried our entire lives had already been paid for on the cross. We read about the Holy Spirit and understood that the presence we felt in our chests since the night at the Kaaba was not just a feeling. It was God himself living inside us. We read the letters of Paul and were stunned by how perfectly they described our experience. Paul wrote about being a new creation, that the old had gone and the new had come. That is exactly what had happened to us. The old Tariq and the old Yusuf, who circled the Kaaba in emptiness, were dead. The men reading the Bible on the bathroom floor were completely new. After about 2 months of reading in secret, we knew we needed community. We needed other believers. We could not grow in faith alone in a bathroom in Mecca. We searched online through encrypted channels and Christian forums that operated in Arabic. We found references to underground gatherings of Christian foreign workers in Jeddah. Small groups of Filipinos and Indians and Ethiopians and Eritreans who met in secret apartments to worship Jesus. We could not travel to Jeddah frequently without raising suspicion, but we managed to connect with a network through an encrypted messaging application. A man named Samuel, who was an Indian Christian working as an engineer in Jeddah, became our lifeline. He communicated with us through disappearing messages that deleted themselves after being read. He answered our theological questions. He sent us audio recordings of sermons. He prayed for us daily. He told us about the underground church in Saudi Arabia, how it operated in the shadows. that how foreign workers risked deportation and imprisonment to gather and worship, how Bibles were smuggled into the country, hidden inside other books and packages, how the body of Christ was alive and growing in the most hostile environment on earth. Samuel also told us something that shook us deeply. He said, "We were not the only Saudis who had encountered Jesus." He said there were others. He did not give us names for security reasons, but he said, over the past decade, a small but growing number of Saudi citizens had come to faith in Christ through dreams and visions. Some had fled the country, some had been caught and imprisoned, some had disappeared, but some were still inside the kingdom living exactly as we were. Secret believers hiding in plain sight, performing Islamic duties in public while worshipping Jesus in private. He said the number was growing every year, that something was happening in the spiritual realm over the Arabian Peninsula that no human organization was orchestrating. God himself was reaching into the birthplace of Islam and pulling people out one by one. He said we were part of something much bigger than we could see. Our content on social media began to shift without us planning it. We could not post the same content anymore. We could not film ourselves reciting Quran with conviction when our hearts belonged to Jesus. So we started changing our messaging subtly. As instead of posting about Islamic rituals and obligations, we started posting about love, about inner peace, about authenticity, about the difference between performing religion and truly knowing God. We never used Christian language. We never mentioned Jesus or the Bible, but the tone was different. The energy was different. Our followers noticed. Comments started appearing saying, "You two seem different lately. Your content feels deeper. What changed?" We responded vaguely saying, "We were on a journey of spiritual growth," but some followers were suspicious. A few accused us of being influenced by Western ideas. One comment said, "You sound like Christians." That comment made my blood run cold. Our father noticed too. One evening over dinner, he looked at us across the table and said, "I watched your latest video. You talked about God's love for 15 minutes, but you did not quote a single verse from the Quran. You did not mention the Prophet once. What is happening with you two?" Yusuf and I exchanged a glance, the kind of glance that only twins can share. A full conversation compressed into a fraction of a second. I looked at my father and said, "We are just trying to reach a broader audience. Young people respond to messages about love and peace more than they respond to fiqh and hadith." My father stared at me for a long time. His eyes were sharp, analytical. The eyes of a man who had spent 30 years studying theology and could detect deviation the way a surgeon detects a tumor. He said, "Be careful. Islam is not a buffet where you pick what you like and leave what you do not. The religion is complete. Do not dilute it for likes and followers." Then he went back to eating. Yusuf and I sat there with our hearts pounding so hard I was sure he could hear them across the table. The walls were closing in. The double life was becoming unsustainable. That every day the gap between who we were in public and who we were in private grew wider, and we both knew that eventually the gap would become too wide to bridge and something would break. Either we would break or the secret would break free. It was only a matter of time. The decision to go public was not made in a single moment. It grew inside us over months like a fire that starts as a spark and slowly builds until it cannot be contained. Every night reading the Bible on the bathroom floor, every day performing Islamic rituals we no longer believed in, every video we posted that danced around the truth without speaking it, every dinner with our father where we smiled and nodded while our hearts screamed to tell him what we had seen at the Kaaba. The pressure was building and we both knew it would eventually explode. The question was not whether we would speak. The question was when and how. We prayed about it constantly. Not the ritual prayers we performed in public at the Grand Mosque. Real prayers. Honest, desperate conversations with Jesus whispered into the darkness of our bathroom at 2 in the morning. We asked him what to do. We asked him when to speak. We asked him if he would protect us when the world turned against us. And every time we prayed, the same answer came back quietly, but unmistakably. Speak. Tell them what you saw. Tell them who I am. Do not be afraid. I am with you. The opportunity came in the summer of 2024. We had been invited to attend a content creators conference in Istanbul, Turkey. This was legitimate. We had attended similar events before. The Saudi influencers regularly travel to Dubai and Istanbul and London for brand partnerships and media events. Our father approved that trip without suspicion. Our mother packed our bags and reminded us to pray on time. We hugged them both at the door of our apartment in Al Aziziyah and walked out into the Makkah heat carrying our luggage and our secret. As we drove to the airport, I looked out the window at the city passing by. The minarets of the Grand Mosque rising above the skyline, the hotels and shopping malls and highways that surrounded the holiest site in Islam, the pilgrims walking along the sidewalks in their white ihram garments, heading toward the Kaaba to circle it the way we had circled it hundreds of times. I watched it all disappear in the rearview mirror and I felt a sharp pain in my chest. Not physical pain. The pain of knowing I would probably never see this city again, never walk these streets again, never hear the adhan echo through these walls again. Makkah was the city that imprisoned me, but it was also the city where Jesus found me. And leaving it felt like leaving the place where I was born twice. We flew from Jeddah to Istanbul and checked into a hotel in the Sultan Ahmed district near the Blue Mosque. We attended the first day of the conference. We smiled for photos. We shook hands with other creators. We played our roles one final time. That evening, we returned to our hotel room and locked the door. We sat on the edge of the bed, side by side, and looked at each other. Yusuf said, "Are we really doing this?" I said, "Yes." He said, "There is no going back after this." I said, "I know." He said, "They will take everything. Our accounts, our followers, our money, our family, our names, our country, everything." I looked at my brother, my identical twin, the person who shared my face and my blood and my secret and my savior. I said, "Yusuf, we gained everything the night Jesus appeared to us at the Kaaba. Whatever they take from us tomorrow cannot compare to what he gave us that night." Yusuf nodded. He reached over and squeezed my hand. Then he said, "Let us do it." We had arranged through Samuel's network to connect with a Christian media organization that operated in Turkey. They documented testimonies of persecuted believers from the Muslim world and distributed them through secure channels. A man named Petros, who ran the organization, met us at a small studio apartment in the Beyoğlu district of Istanbul. The apartment had been converted into a simple recording space. A camera on a tripod, 2 chairs, a plain background, 2 microphones. Petros told us we could take as much time as we needed. He said we did not have to use our real names if we did not want to. We told him we wanted the world to see our faces and hear our real names. He looked at us for a long moment and then said, "You are very brave." I said, "No, we are not brave. We are just tired of hiding." We sat down in the 2 chairs side by side, 2 identical faces, same dark eyes, same sharp jawline, same black hair, same expression of terrified determination. The camera light turned red and Petros said, "Whenever you are ready, I spoke first. I looked directly into the camera and said, "My name is Tariq Al-Harbi. This is my twin brother, Yusuf Al-Harbi. We are from Makkah, Saudi Arabia. Our father is an Islamic scholar at Al-Qura University. We have over 3 million followers on social media. We have memorized the entire Quran. We have performed tawaf around the Kaaba more times than we can count. We are the sons of Islam. And we are here to tell you that Jesus Christ appeared to us inside the Grand Mosque in Makkah during tawaf and changed our lives forever." Then Yusuf spoke. He said, "We spent our entire lives walking in circles around a stone searching for God. We prayed 5 times a day. We fasted every Ramadan. We did everything Islam asked of us. And we felt nothing. We were empty. We were dead inside. We performed faith for cameras and followers while our souls were starving. Then one night, Jesus appeared to us at the Kaaba. Both of us saw him. Both of us heard him. He stood in the middle of the tawaf circle and said, 'You are walking in circles searching for God, but God is not in this stone. I am the way. Stop walking. Come to me.' We took turns telling the story. I would speak for a few minutes, then Yusuf would continue. We finished each other's sentences the way we had done our entire lives, but this time we were not finishing sentences about content ideas or dinner plans. We were finishing sentences about the most important event in human history intersecting with the most important moment of our personal lives. I described the light. Yusuf described the warmth. I described the scars on his hands. Yusuf described the words that echoed inside our chests. I described falling to my knees on the marble floor. Yusuf described the love that flooded through us like a dam breaking. That we traded the story back and forth, weaving it together like 2 threads forming a single rope. And the camera captured all of it, every word, every tear, every moment of raw, unfiltered truth pouring out of 2 identical faces that the Muslim world had celebrated as model believers. Then I said the words that I knew would set the Muslim world on fire. I looked into the camera and said, "Jesus appeared to us in Mecca, not in a dream, not in our imagination, in the Grand Mosque during Tawaf, surrounded by thousands of Muslim pilgrims circling the Kaaba. He stood there in the holiest place in Islam and declared that he is the way, not Muhammad, not the Kaaba, not Islam, Jesus. He is the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through him. We know this because we saw him with our own eyes, both of us, 2 witnesses, 2 identical testimonies. And we are telling the world because the world needs to know that the God they are searching for in Makkah is not inside a black stone. He's a living person with scars on his hands and love in his eyes, and he is calling every Muslim on earth to stop walking in circles and come to him." Yusuf added, "We know what this testimony will cost us. We know the Saudi government will cancel our passports. We know our social media accounts will be deleted. We know our father will disown us. We know we may never set foot in Saudi Arabia again. We know our lives are in danger. We know all of this. And we are speaking anyway, because Jesus is worth more than followers. He is worth more than fame. He is worth more than safety. He is worth more than the approval of our family and our country and the entire Muslim world combined. He is worth everything." The video was uploaded within 24 hours. What happened next was beyond anything we could have anticipated. It did not just go viral, it detonated. Within 3 days, it had been viewed over 20 million times. Saudi state media issued a statement calling us mentally disturbed and victims of a Western psychological operation designed to destabilize Islam. Our social media accounts on every platform were permanently deleted. 3 million followers erased overnight. Our father appeared on a Saudi television program and publicly disowned us. He sat in front of the camera in his white tobe and his perfectly trimmed beard and said with a voice that did not tremble, "I have no sons named Tariq and Yusuf. They are dead to me and dead to this family. May Allah guide them back to the straight path or punish them for their betrayal." Watching that clip on a laptop screen in our hotel room in Istanbul was the most painful moment of my life. More painful than the years of emptiness, more painful than the silence of Allah. Hearing my own father declare me dead while sitting in the same chair where he used to help me memorize Quran as a child broke something inside me that I am still healing from. But the messages that poured in from across the Muslim world made every sacrifice worth it. Thousands upon thousands of messages from Saudi Arabia and Egypt and Iraq and Jordan and Morocco and Algeria and Indonesia and Pakistan and Malaysia and dozens of other countries. Messages from Muslims who said I saw him too. That I had a dream of the man in white. I have been hiding my faith for years. I thought I was the only one. Your testimony gave me courage. You spoke for me when I could not speak for myself. One message came from a young woman in Riyadh who said she was the daughter of a judge in the Saudi court system. She said Jesus had appeared to her in a dream 6 months ago and she had been living in terror ever since. She said watching two sons of an Islamic scholar confess their faith publicly gave her the strength to believe that she was not insane, that what she experienced was real, that Jesus was real. She said, "I am not alone anymore because of you." Another message came from a man in Jeddah who said he was a retired military officer. He said he had encountered Jesus during Hajj 3 years ago, but had never told a single soul. He said our testimony broke the chains of fear that had kept him silent, and he was now ready to live openly for Christ, whatever the cost. We are still in a secure location that I will not name for safety reasons. We have applied for asylum and are being supported by Christian organizations that help persecuted believers from the Muslim world. We have lost everything the world says matters: our country, our family, our fame, our followers, our income, our identity as Saudi citizens. All of it gone. And yet sitting here next to my brother in a small apartment with nothing but the clothes we packed for a trip we knew we would never return from, I can tell you with absolute certainty that we have never been richer, because we have Jesus, and he is worth more than every follower, every real, every passport, and every earthly kingdom combined. Now, I want to speak directly to every Muslim watching this. You do not have to walk in circles anymore. You do not have to perform rituals that leave you empty. You do not have to earn God's love through endless striving and obedience to a system that never tells you if you have done enough. There is a God who already did enough. He did it on a cross 2,000 years ago. His name is Jesus. And he is not waiting for you to be good enough to come to him. He's standing in the middle of your circles right now, waiting for you to stop, to look up, and to see him. Yusuf and I want to end this testimony the way we do everything, together. So here are our final words spoken as one. We walked in circles around the Kaaba for years, searching for God. But God was never in the circles. He was standing in the center, waiting for us to stop and look at him. We stopped, we looked, and we found him. His name is Jesus, and he is everything. If this testimony touched your heart, write in the comments, "We stopped and we found him." Let it be a declaration over your life. Let it be a prayer over the Muslim world. Let it be a signal to every secret believer hiding in every city, in every country, who thinks they are alone. You are not alone. We see you. Jesus sees you. And the day is coming when every circle will break and every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord. That day is closer than you think. We stopped walking in circles and we found him. Now it is your turn.